Every autumn, all across the country, people drag the fallen branches and dead wood out of their yards, pile it up, and set it on fire. They are burning 20 years of free water. Because there is a way of building a garden bed, centuries old, where you take that exact wood, the logs, the branches, the brush you were about to torch, and instead of burning it, you bury it. And the bed you build on top of that buried wood will water itself through dry spells, through brutal, rainless summers, through droughts that empty the wells around it. For 15 years, 20 years, without you ever once dragging out a hose. It has a name now. Hugelkultur. The word is German and only goes back about 100 years, but the method behind it is far older, old enough that no one can say who did it first. And the reason you have never heard of it is the same reason you have never heard of half the things on this channel. There is no money in it. You cannot sell a man fertilizer if he grows food on buried logs for free. You cannot sell him water by the gallon if his garden waters itself. So here's the question. If a pile of buried wood can carry a garden through 20 summers, why are we setting it on fire every autumn? Who decided the branches in our own yard are garbage, and the water for our gardens is something we rent from a utility company for the rest of our lives? Let's trace it back. The man who dragged this method back into the light in our own lifetime was an Austrian farmer named Sepp Holzer. And to understand why what he did mattered, you have to understand where he did it. Holzer farmed high in the Austrian Alps, over 1,000 meters up. Cold, steep, short seasons, hard frosts, thin, poor soil clinging to a slope. The kind of land the experts called marginal, not land you grow real food on. Everyone around him farmed the way the schools taught. Plow, feed from a bag, spray, irrigate. Holzer watched all of that fail slowly on land like his, and he did something different. He stopped fighting the mountain and started watching it. He saw how a fallen tree in the forest held moisture underneath long after the open ground had dried, and he started burying wood, whole logs, branches, brush under mounds of soil and planting on top. His neighbors thought he had lost his mind, but the beds started producing. Not a little, but abundantly. On that cold Alpine slope, Holzer grew vegetables, grain, fruit trees, cherries, kiwis, and famously, against everything the experts said was possible, he grew lemons, citrus, on an Austrian mountain that gets buried in snow with no heated greenhouse and no irrigation. The buried wood and the shape of his mounds made warm, moist pockets where fruit that should have frozen simply did not. And here is the part that matters most for us. Through droughts that left his neighbors hauling water and watching their wells run dry, Holzer's terraces stayed moist. He was not irrigating. He had built the water storage directly into the ground years earlier, and it just kept giving. But Holzer did not invent this. He remembered it. Go back across the old farmlands of Germany and Eastern Europe centuries before he was born, and you find peasants doing the same thing. They lived on land that was poor and dry, and they had nothing to waste. They could not run to a store for fertilizer or turn a tap for water. So every fallen branch, every cleared stump, every bit of woody waste went back into the ground, mounded over with soil, and the ground gave back for years. It was not a clever theory to them. It was survival. That knowledge passed quietly from one generation to the next until cheap fertilizer came in a bag and water came through a pipe, and the slow old methods got pushed aside as primitive. Within a couple of generations, something that had fed people for centuries nearly vanished. So what is actually happening under that mound? Because once you understand it, you'll see this isn't folklore. It's physics and biology doing exactly what they're supposed to. When you bury wood and cover it with soil, it begins, slowly, to rot. As wood decays, it transforms. The hard, dense log turns soft and spongy, riddled with channels and pores where the solid fibers used to be. If you have ever picked up an old, rotting log from a forest floor and felt how light it is, how it holds dampness even in dry weather, that is exactly what is happening beneath your bed. And that spongy, decaying wood is one of the most absorbent things in nature. When the rain comes and the snow melts, the water sinks down and the buried wood drinks it in and holds it. A thick mound stores a huge reservoir of water, far more than soil alone ever could. The wood becomes a reservoir, a hidden tank of water under your plants, filled for free by the weather. Then comes the dry stretch, high summer, the surface baked and cracked, no rain for a month, the gardens around you wilting. Down in your mound, the buried wood does the opposite of what it did in spring. It gives the water back. Slowly and steadily, it releases the moisture into the soil around it, and the roots reaching down find water waiting for them weeks after the last rain. Dig into a proper mound in the middle of a drought and you will pull your hand out damp. That is not magic. That is a sponge buried in the ground, doing what a sponge does. And it does more than hold water. As the wood breaks down over the years, it releases a steady trickle of nutrients, feeding the bed from below without a bag of fertilizer ever being opened. There's even a third gift. That slow decay gives off a gentle warmth, the same heat you feel in a compost pile, which nudges the soil a few degrees warmer and stretches your season a little at both ends. It is part of how Holzer grew what he grew on a freezing mountainside. Water stored and released, nutrients fed out for years, a little warmth from below, all from a pile of wood you were going to burn, and all of it lasting, because a thick hardwood log takes the better part of 20 years to fully return to the earth. You build it once. It pays you back for 2 decades. Now this is the part where most important people get scared off, and it's the single most important thing I'm going to tell you, because it's the one real catch and almost nobody explains it honestly. You'll hear from somewhere that you must never bury wood in your garden. The warning sounds scientific. Wood is full of carbon, and when you bury it, the microbes breaking it down need nitrogen and will pull it straight out of your soil, the same nitrogen your plants need. So the wood, they say, will rob your soil, starve your crops, turn your seedlings yellow. For decades, this warning sat in university pamphlets and gardening books, and it scared countless people away from one of the best methods there is. Here is the truth. That warning is half right, and the half that's wrong is the half that matters. It is true that fresh wood, chopped small and mixed all through your topsoil, will steal nitrogen as it breaks down. If you tilled fresh wood chips into the top few inches where your seedlings are rooting, you'd see exactly the yellow, stunted plants the warning describes. That part is real, and I won't pretend otherwise. But that is the opposite of what this method does. In Hugelkultur, the wood is buried deep. Whole logs and thick branches down at the bottom of the mound, well below the root zone, capped with a thick layer of good soil and compost. 2 things protect you. Your plant's roots are growing in that rich upper layer, drawing nitrogen from the soil and compost around them, not from the wood far below. And wood buried in big pieces breaks down slowly, mostly through fungi, rather than the nitrogen-hungry bacteria that cause the problem. The tie-up happens right where wood meets soil, and deep in a mound, that zone is far from where your plants feed. This isn't just reasoning. When researchers built Hugelkultur beds beside ordinary raised beds, planted the same crops under the same conditions, and measured. The plants over the buried wood showed no nitrogen shortage. In some trials, they measured higher nitrogen and did better than the normal beds. The warning that scared people off for decades didn't survive someone actually testing it. So the catch is real, but completely avoidable. And it comes down to two rules. Keep the wood deep and whole, never chipped fine and mixed into your planting layer. And cap the mound with a generous layer of good soil and compost that first season, so your plants root in rich ground while the wood works far below. Follow those two rules, and the nitrogen problem never arrives. Nearly every person who says Hugel culture failed them broke one of them. And while I'm being straight with you, here's the rest of the honest picture. The first year is the weakest. The mound is still settling, and the wood is only beginning to break down, so you may still water that first summer. It comes into its real strength in the second and third years, and keeps giving from there. The mound will also sink as the wood decays, sometimes by a third over the first couple of years. So build it higher than you want it to end up. And the wood matters. Dense hardwoods like oak, birch, maple, and apple are best because they rot slow and hold water long. Avoid rot-resistant woods like cedar and black locust. Never use black walnut, which poisons many garden plants, and never use treated or painted lumber anywhere near food. If you want the full build written out, exactly how deep to dig, the order of the layers, how high to mound for how much settling, and the complete list of which woods to use and which to never touch. That's one of the builds in the guide I keep for this channel, alongside the rest of the old ways of keeping a garden alive through heat and drought. But you don't need it to understand the shape of it. So here's how a mound goes together. You start by choosing your spot and deciding whether to build up or down. Build it up on the ground for a tall mound, or dig a shallow trench first to bury the wood deeper and keep the bed lower. The deeper the wood, the bigger your reservoir. Lay your biggest logs down first, right on the bottom. Use the thick hardwood that will still be working 15 years from now. Pack smaller branches and twigs on top, working them into the gaps so there are not big air pockets. Then add a layer of softer organic matter, grass clippings, leaves, old straw, garden waste, packed down into and over the wood to kickstart the decomposition. Finally, cap the whole thing with a thick, generous layer of good topsoil and compost, deep enough to plant into. This is the step that protects you from the nitrogen problem, so do not skimp. Shape it tall and steep or low and gentle to suit your space. Then plant, water it in that first season while it establishes, and step back. Which brings us back to where we started. We did not stop burying wood because it stopped working. It never stopped working. Holzer's mounds are still holding water on that Alpine slope, and gardeners who build these beds are still throwing their hoses in the shed 3 years later. We stopped because somewhere along the way we were taught that the branches in our yard are trash to be burned, and the water for our gardens is something we buy by the gallon. For as long as we live, a buried pile of logs that waters a garden for 20 years doesn't sell anything to anyone. And that, and nothing else, is why it was allowed to be forgotten. The knowledge was never lost. It was just never sold to you. Now you have it. So tell me down in the comments, do you have a pile of wood, or fallen branches, or an old stump sitting somewhere in your yard right now? Because I want you to look at that pile differently after today. That's not garbage waiting for a match. That's a 20-year reservoir waiting to be buried. And most people are about to set theirs on fire without ever knowing what they had. And if you want the rest of these, the forgotten ways of keeping a garden alive through heat and drought that nobody teaches anymore, subscribe and stay with me. The next one is about something even older than buried wood, a way of shaping the ground itself, sinking your beds down into the earth instead of raising them up, that let people grow food in the open desert in full sun on almost no rain at all. I'll see you then. Keep it alive out there.